Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin Auletta. After an entire week of traveling on the road from Chicago to Toronto, and then they got Philly on Friday, we decided this week to give Alice Atkins the week off, but he will shortly be back as we descend into the postseason. Not exactly sure about the date and time of the game that the Empire are not confirmed yet to be hosting. But this weekend, if they take care of business against Philadelphia, they do own the tiebreaker over DC. So they would wrap up the 2 seed, and then they would host the DC Breeze before potentially, if they beat DC, heading out on the road for Boston in the weeks after that. So that would be what the playoff picture in the East, at least, is looking like right now. For DC, they take on Atlanta this weekend, so still some work to do for them as well, as Atlanta do, I believe, need a little bit of help in the South to get that 3rd seed away from the San Diego Growlers. But we're going to head back to New York. We're going to talk about their pair of road wins, again, at Chicago and Toronto, scoring 61 goals. The first time that any team this season has scored more than 30 in a weekend. And it was a weird weekend. It was a Friday, Sunday. So you did have some people saying, well, it wasn't the actual doubleheader next day, Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. They did have a day to rest in between where they got to watch the World Cup. They got to watch Boston at Minnesota, which we're going to talk about at the very end. But, with all the travel, they never really came home. To me, Pippin, this still feels like an actual road trip that we're going to just kind of treat as if it was a back-to-back road trip.
It's a real road trip. I don't know if it's back-to-back, but that's fine.
Yeah.
The stats are all made up anyway. You can make up any stat to fit whatever narrative you want. So we'll let it slide. It works. They scored a lot of goals. That's the positive outlook on it all. I guess if you want to be a little more real, the competition wasn't exactly the best in the league. No offense to those two teams. And then if you want to get on the things to improve on side, I didn't even love what I watched for some of it. I mean, they scored a lot of goals, but yeah, we'll get into it. But yeah, it wasn't even they weren't really ramping up to postseason play the way you would want. But sometimes that's hard when the opponents aren't necessarily postseason caliber.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about the D-line in a bit, but I would argue that the O-lines did, and certain players in particular, look revved up and ready to go, including a gentleman who's about to turn 34 in a few weeks in August in Ben Yacht. So 38-18 win over the Union on Friday night. Yacht with 5 goals and assists in the Empire's 31-18 rout over the Union. And then 2 days later, 30-24 over Toronto, so a +6 for that one. Desmarais that time was at least a statistical destructive force against Toronto, 8 assists, 4 goals. And also the other reason for Desmarais' stats, again, 8 assists, 4 goals being so high was, that's for the whole weekend, I should say. Against Toronto for Desmarais, it was 7 goals and 11 assists total over 1,100 total yards on the weekend. There we go. So, yeah, there we go. For the total weekend, it was 7 goals, 11 assists, 1,100 total yards, 8 assists, 4 goals against Toronto. Sure. And so Desmarais, what made him so obviously statistically mighty over the weekend was the fact that he was playing a ton of D points. And we actually did get to see where he would fit in on those D lines a little bit more, where he fit in on that D2 line, and kind of answered that question, like who was going to cross over. And the answer is Desmarais will be the first person to cross over before Yop, before anybody else on that O-line. He's going to be the man to cross over first. Now, again, Ben Yacht had 5 goals and assists against the Union on Friday, 7 more scores for Yacht on Sunday, and not a single throwaway all weekend for Yacht. So, again, that's a huge number for him. He, with just 2 throwaways on the year, by the way, we're talking a little Ben Yacht here, with just 2 throwaways on the year, 98.4% completion rate. That is by far, not a little bit, by far the highest
Big time.
In his 12-year career.
Yeah.
He is 7 for 7 on Hucks in 9 games, which, looking at his last 4 regular seasons combined, 9 for 22 for 40.9%. This year, he is 7 of 7. We've been talking about the year that this is.
Sorry, I was just going to say, with age comes wisdom. I mean, you can be a 2-time MVP and your game can still be maturing as you get older, even if he's not quite as fast or as springy or whatever, and he still looks pretty fast. So it's not like he's a slug out there. It just shows that you can always work on what you're doing, seeing on the field, and make a big impact.
And the offense also converted 15 of 19 hucks on the weekend, 10.5 turns per game in the two games. There were 11 turnovers per game, by the way, on the season, are 2 full turnovers per game less than Boston, who is second in the league at 13.1 turns per contest. Here's what we're getting to before we do the D-line stuff. I felt like for the first time this weekend, yes, the competition was different, but, or by different, I mean not really up to the playoff standard that we're going to see with DC and potentially with Boston. But the coaching staff, including Anthony Nunez, even said it. This was the first weekend. They had all the pieces. And you saw Eberhardt. Saul Westmeyer-Bailey was actually scoring a bit in that Toronto game.
He had a great catch, that one. It looked like the defender was going to run past him, and he reached, but also towed the line. I mean, towing the end zone to stay and score a goal wasn't necessarily 100% necessary in that situation. He could have maybe just caught it and been right outside the line. But yeah, fantastic catch. That was a good play, and you could tell his teammates were hyped up for him on that one.
Yeah. Again, so to see him fit back into the O-line for the weekend, again, with Eberhardt, who played on Friday, and again, Demarais, and Yacht, and Cowan, and of course, Atkins, all the pieces were there this weekend to really feel like that O-line is clicking. Oliver Chartok, we know, is just going to be playing D-line straight. And that O-line especially does not want to have to dip into the John Randolph well. Like that break glass case emergency comes when that O-line gets broken, which this weekend, because of the margins of victory, you saw that they pulled the trigger on the O-line a lot quicker. It'd be like, you get broken once, here comes a D-line on O, and let's get back on schedule. But we expect that it's not going to be the case in the playoffs. You'd expect that they're going to go, likely what they do is the two straight O-line points, and then you either switch out certain players or what have you. But yeah, I think when we talk about revving up for the postseason, regardless of the competition, it felt like this O-line, especially Jacob Cowan, like over the weekend, his numbers were not egregiously high, but I felt like the way he came back in the handler space a bit more, I thought their flow was just a lot better. Like they're able to play through, we go back to the Ryan Oscar championship weekend 2023, where we knew going into that being the best thrower in the league, being the MVP of the league, everybody's going to try to force him upfield. And so Atkins knows, hey, they're going to try to force me upfield. And if the defense can take away so many things they want to do, which can we force Demarais to the sidelines? Can we force Atkins upfield? Can we force Yacht to the sidelines and we try to trap him there? Can we put pressure on the resets in Eberhard and Westmeyer-Bailey? So if all of those different things are happening, what is then plan 5 or 6? And I felt like the Empire O-line this weekend just kind of went through almost like a NFL quarterback going through the progressions, right? Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, here's 5. And they just always had an answer for everything.
Yeah, I felt like a few times earlier in the season, they didn't always have that cutter fill all the way into the backfield for just like who cares if you lose 20, 30 yards on occasion? You just don't want to turn the disc over. So earlier in the season, they weren't necessarily getting that, and things were getting a little gummed up, and they looked a little hectic. This time, it always felt like they had the big swing, just lose a ton of yards, whatever, get the reset. It seemed like everyone was on the same page. Cowan came back for a lot of those. Labar was kind of in the backfield too, and if you put them on paper where they're starting, they're not handling, but they all meshed and flowed, and everything just kind of went as it needed to. I agree 100% on that.
Yeah, I mean, even I didn't mention Jack Williams or Matt Labar on that O-line either, because to your point, I didn't feel like anybody had to do too much. It felt like everybody was kind of playing within the system, and yes, there were here and there turnovers, and I mean, for that O-line, it was Labar was kind of struggling a little bit on Friday night, 2 turnovers for him, 1 for Demarais, 1 for Atkins, and just kind of working through either the wind in Chicago, and then the wind was a bit mightier in Toronto, so 1 or 2 of those turnovers were just based on the wind. On the other side, for the D-line, especially against Chicago, you just would have wanted them to be a bit more efficient. They had a turnover here from Barry, a turnover there from Marquez, uncharacteristic kind of short throw from Randolph where he just short-armed it on an under.
A lot of those look like you just maybe just the tiniest bit of wind and the tiniest bit of pressure, and you rethink it, and then you just kind of goof it, and
Yeah.
That just happens sometimes. And those were the mistakes that, when you're watching, you're like, this team needs to clean it up, because those mistakes will kill you against a better team. But you also might not throw that against a better team. You might look for option number 3 instead of option number 2. It's not like those were all high stall situations. They just kind of were just a tiny bit off on some of those resets and things. And that's why I think the drop numbers were a little bit higher than normal, even if it was just like 1 or 2 a game. And, and that was from both teams. It looked like drops were just plentiful in some of those games. And that happens when the wind is not necessarily super strong, but just like a little infrequent and a little bit of gust. It's like every once in a while it just throws things off that tiny little bit. And, when you're locked in and you think you're about to catch something and turn and dish and go, when this moves a fraction of an inch, sometimes that's enough to just kind of throw you off, and you're on autopilot and you just miss it because you didn't think you needed to adjust to any sort of wind.
Yeah, against Chicago, now kind of transitioning to D-line, the Empire weren't really taking the disc away much. Like Whitlock had 3 blocks, but I think at least one of those came on an end of quarter situation.
Yeah.
And then you had Penarella with 2, Bobby had 1, Elston, Sonigal with 1, Luke Barry with 1, Agami Contreras with a pretty nice one it was a swing around that he just kind of ran through there in the backfield, and Atkins got one back for the O-line as well. And then Toronto 2 days later, I thought those blocks were a little more earned. Sonigal with 3, all of those felt earned. Whitlock had 2 more, so 5 for him on the weekend. Alex Davis, good defense from him, getting one back as Davis. Alex, by the way, also played on the O-line on Sunday, taking the place of Eberhard, who had played on Friday. And so that's also to add a little wrinkle to the O-line, being able to incorporate the different personnel as well, switching out a handler for a cutter and still playing 8 deep for your O-line. Again, it just means that you've got all 9 players on that O-line understand their role, regardless of the other permutations who are on the field, which just takes reps and time.
It'll be interesting to see what the 20 is for the first playoff game, because I feel like the team, I don't have an exact number or the exact list of names, but I feel like they really like 22-ish players. That's kind of how I feel on that. And, are they going to sacrifice somebody from the O-line or just like that last guy on defense? But a lot of the players who are getting, a chance to show what they can do on defense are getting blocks in some of these games. And that's potentially more crucial than having, a 9th or 10th O-line player when you could always move John Randolph or move Oliver Chartok. So, those are tough decisions to make. It'd be really interesting to see how it's all going to shake out for the first playoff game.
Well, as of right now, I'm continuing to we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. So as I continue to just refresh the page, the Empire have not submitted anything. All we know is there is no Ben Simmons and no Desmarais this weekend.
And they'll be on the playoff 20, so that's...
I would assume that Ben Simmons and Desmarais are going to make it. Don Desmarais, if he's left out, that would just be that would probably just be a clerical error. And when it comes to Desmarais, I think the Empire are all fed up with clerical errors for this season. I think they're no more for Don Desmarais. But when it came to the Toronto game, you felt like they were taking the ball away a little bit more, which is what you want to see from the D-line. Now, actually, before we get into the boring numbers again, I want to talk quickly about the other UMass, not Lehman, who was playing on Sunday, but the other UMass kid in Nima Lamo. He was on Sunday against Toronto terrific. Like really, 100%. Really good.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think he'll be in the 20 for the playoff game? Having only a small sample size, I would say no, but maybe you have some info that I don't, or certainly made a case, right? Nobody looks out of place in these games. And again, it's not against the top of the division, but showed he could also help on offense, on the D-line offense too, because, that was a cute little flick that just dropped right in, right where it needed to go for that easy goal when I'm sure they could have dumped and swung it 3 or 4 more times and found some space, but that's something that the D-line on occasion kind of has a little trouble with. So, it's nice to have an extra player who is confident enough to throw something bladey to somebody wide open and just kind of end the point. Sometimes you just need that. So, it's hard.
Yep, we saw him against Philly, now going back 2 weeks, and now seeing him against Toronto again. You're right. You haven't seen him with that step up, but he was the defensive player of the year in all college ultimate which is not too shabby. It kind of tells you that, going back and actually a former Empire player and Boston Glory player, sorry, not an Empire player, a former Boston Glory player in Cam Warner. That's kind of who he reminds me of. Just long, rangy. I mean, his mark is really, really dangerous, and he's just there. Pressure. He's right there on the pressure, and yeah, he's gonna be a tough one, I think, to leave out. Oliver Fay also playing on Sunday. Ethan Lehman playing on Sunday. So yeah, you mentioned it. Like there's like 24 guys that just feel like they're hovering right there in that 20.
I might have undersold it when I said 23, yeah, or 22, yeah.
Yeah,
It's tough. I mean, maybe
your O line goes 10 deep, or 9 deep. Sorry, your O line goes 9 deep. So that means you basically have 11 pieces that you're using for the D line. But also remember, now that 12th piece is Desmarais. So Desmarais, I think moving forward, we're going to expect to see him on both sides of the disc in this postseason. I think that's something to anticipate. He's still one of the best defenders on the team as well. So looking at the defensive stats, not to upset people here, but New York right now ranks 5th in the league in opponent hold rate allowed, 4th in huck rate allowed, and 6th in blocks per game. All of that's pretty good. That's top 7 in all of those defensive categories while having the number 1 offense in the league right now. Minnesota do have some of the offensive categories, but just
I was going to say, what is that, number 1 in points scored?
That's what it might be, but yeah. So like Minnesota, I think it's also offensive efficiency overall, but again, there's a lot of factors going into that, and because, as you mentioned, the scoring is much lesser in the East, there's also less opportunities. And so when it comes to efficiency, the Empire is still a bit higher in categories. Either way, the defensive efficiency, and now this is like advanced metrics here. Empire punched in 25 of the 33 break chances in the 2-game road trip, so that number actually goes up. So this number I'm giving you is heading into the weekend because I didn't want to use the Chicago blowout to kind of skew this number a bit.
That's fair.
So going into the weekend, their defensive efficiency sat at 53.8%, which was 9th in the UFA. The 4 teams that are favored to go to championship weekend, being the 1 seeds, are ranked 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in that category. Now the problem here is that defensive efficiency, while it was great up against Chicago, it plummeted in the losses to Boston and DC. So against DC in that overtime loss, it was 36.1%. And against Boston in week 8, it was 37.5% defensive efficiency.
I'd be curious to know what other teams, what their defensive efficiencies would be against New York or Boston against DC against each other, or Boston against Minnesota in that game that was just played. I'd be curious to know what those numbers are and how it all kind of meshes together, because I could see that being a little skewed against the better competition. You're obviously going to break fewer times, and if your D-line might turn it over, if you don't, timeout, take it away, whatever, you're playing against better offensive players who are probably better at getting the disc back. So I could see it being skewed a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you would like for the numbers to be higher, but.
So is this a really good defensive unit, or is this an elite defensive unit?
Really good. I think they play good defense. I think they switch and help okay at times. I think they switch and help enough to slow other teams down. It doesn't always generate the turns you would hope it would. And then on the flip side, their defense is offense. Like, some games it looks great regardless of who the competition is, and then other games it's just like kind of a sloppy mess, and you pray they time out and pull them off the field. You kind of don't know what you're going to get week to week. That's, I think, the main issue. It's like sometimes some of those D-liners, they move really well, they play a little small ball and they handle their space, and then they kind of open it up and find something, and then other times it just looks so stalled and painful while they're praying that somebody's going to get open, or praying that somebody else takes over while they wait and watch. I don't know. I've never got the sense that, like, I guess you just don't know who's like the main dude on that D-line offense other than John Randolph to an extent. It always just seems like different guy fills in each week, and maybe that's why they don't always know how to flow as well.
Well, I got 25 players who have played who have played in 6 games or more. Well, 24. Then Oliver Fay has played 4, but he was also injured. So if you count Oliver Fay, it'd be 25 players who played 4 games or more this season. And again, that's not counting Nimalamo, who played 2. It's not counting Ethan Lehman, who's played 2, like the college reinforcements. So there's, when we talk about the 20, again, there's no, jumping out to see who's going to play against DC. But before that, it is a game against Philadelphia. And before we do that, we don't have to do too much about Philly. That's, again, already on Friday at the Stadium Memorial Field. It is the last regular season home game, so please get your tickets early. Get there.
Hey Empire fans, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is your home for all the latest Empire gear. From hats to hoodies to discs and coaching, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is the best place to get yourself ready for the next Empire game.
Hola Empire aficionados, ShopEmpireUltimate.com es tu casa para todo lo nuevo de Empire. Desde cachuchas a sudaderas a frisbees y entrenadores. ShopEmpireUltimate.com es el lugar para que te alistes para el siguiente juego de Empire.
I just want to head over to Boston beating Minnesota real quick, because Boston to have to get to avoid, I should say, 2 games in the postseason, the way the Empire are going to have to do, they had to beat Minnesota, who were undefeated. So now we have a season where, and I don't remember the last time we had a season where there was not an undefeated team. It's got to be pre-pandemic, because between the Empire and Chicago, well, Chicago had a regular season last year. So I guess we'll say undefeated regular seasons, not undefeated seasons, but undefeated regular seasons. It might be pre-pandemic. But with Boston beating Minnesota, they picked up their first loss of the season, and Boston clinched the 1 seed. 21-20 win. For Toba Decrana, 9 assists, 1 goal, +9. Edmund, 6 goals, 1 assist, +6. Cole Davis-Brand had a huge game on defense, one of his best games in a Glory uniform. And Boston jumped out early in that game, punched them in the mouth. 3 first-quarter breaks helped them to a 7-3 lead. Minnesota got some back to go 12-10 down at half. Winchell tied it up at 17s into the 4th quarter, and then took an 18-17 lead into the 4th. But then Boston goes on a 3-0 run that started with an almost 9-minute point with multiple turnovers for both teams. Then less than a 80-second break then right after that, which is always how it works, it seems like. What that game, not say it taught us, really the only lesson is that these top 4 teams, everybody's going to be able to beat everybody. No respect to the South with Austin, but we've now seen Boston beat Minnesota, Minnesota beat Oakland, and the Empire are the 1 loss for Boston on their record, which again I think is a tip of the hat for the Empire. But it just shows you that whoever gets the championship weekend, anybody's going to be able to everybody. There is no clear set 1 overall seed. Maybe it is Oakland because of the way they play consistently this year, but it's really hard to tell because everybody can beat everybody.
Yeah, it'll certainly be exciting. I mean, for New York, from a New York perspective, I assume the team believes they can beat anybody and they can win the whole thing, and I would agree with that. But you could just as easily tell me that, they're going to lose to DC in the first round. DC is going to play well. New York's going to make 2 early mistakes. The game's going to be tight, and they're going to lose a double overtime thriller. That wouldn't surprise me either. That's the quality of the top 3 teams in the East. And if they're fortunate enough to make it to championship weekend, same thing. I mean, all the other top teams, I feel like everybody's close. Nobody is just leaps and bounds better than everybody. Nobody, I feel like when New York won in 22 and 23, it felt like kind of inevitable. They were so dominant on some of those runs, and just their players were just bigger and better, and there was just nothing anybody could do. It just, the postseason there almost felt like a victory lap. So, I don't think we're getting that from any team this year.
No, not at all. And to your point, DC is now healthy at the right time. Jasper Tom has come back. You have AJ Merriman looking not only healthy, but he looks right. He looks like he is not laboring in any way. And with DC getting healthy at the perfect time, and New York is healthy, and to that point, they've got the full collection of the players they have. Boston's not entirely healthy, but they've also proven that they can send any 20. And the young kids on Boston, whether it's Tapper or McGinnis, whoever it was. Like they got huge contributions from names that have just showed up that are not wearing the right jerseys that are down the depth chart. And Boston is able to. And again, this is always a big credit to not only Sam Rosenthal, who's been there since the beginning, but while he has not played much this year, there's also that looming specter of postseason Jeff Babbitt. He has not played now for, I think, about a month and a half, 2 months, but he is still this looming specter because even if he doesn't play, you could feel his fingerprints on that D-line. Just like being an elder statesman, being a voice there, and getting everybody to buy into a system, regardless of whether or not you just showed up from college a month ago or you've been in preseason for 4 months now.
Yeah,
everybody on their D-line is just bought into that system.
And they've won without him against top level teams. So it's not like they're going to have to prove they can do it. They've already proved that's where they're at. You have the ability to potentially add one of the best players in the league at any point during this run, and you're already that good without him. So yeah, it's a luxury if he is healthy and can play. And I guess from a New York perspective, it's scary to know that they can beat you without him, and he might also still be there.
Well, now looking ahead real quick to Philadelphia in 2 days' time, I think I'm going to steal this a little bit from the head coach of Philadelphia. I got a chance to talk to him yesterday, in Adam Callahan. Both teams, I think, are chasing consistency, but as he said it, and he said this really well, from the opposite end of the spectrum. The Empire are consistent for 95% of games, while Philly are consistent for 70 to 75% of games. And as we've learned, 70 to 75% gets you a really scrappy 1-10 record. But in the East, and that's more in the East, I don't know what Philly would be otherwise, because again, I'm watching a bunch of tape in preparation of the game, and he's right, though. Philly has been good for 70 to 75%, but they're just so young. And it's not just like the players aren't necessarily good enough young. It is that this is a really, really absurdly young team. Of their top 5 most important players, of the top 7 most important players, 5 of them are 20 to 22 years old. And it just there's a lot of youth in that team, and a lot of their elder statesmen have just been unavailable. I mean, just the ones even on the roster, not the ones that have left. Like not having the likes of Greg Martin all year with injuries, having Paul Owens twice. It's just they're even missing those steady veteran hands to help out with that youth, and just a lot of youth who have the talent to play again for 70% of a game. They just haven't had the horses. And then for the Empire, to speak about this game from their perspective, they, I think, are really striving for that. Hey, we want to wire, because even against Chicago, that first 5 minutes of that game were not pretty. And
the word you're looking for is ugly. It was ugly.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That feo in Espanol.
Muy feo.
Yeah. So that's what they're looking to begin and end this game and go 100% against Philadelphia, because that's what might be required against DC, Boston. And then again, looking ahead, not too quickly, but yeah, you're going to have to win 4 games against really tough competition regardless this year. There is no easier path even at championship weekend. You're going to have to go, especially for the Empire, because of where they rank. They will get the 1 seed. If they were to upset Boston, if they got past DC, then they upset Boston, they would then get Oakland if Oakland hadn't been upset, which again looks very, 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 very unlikely in the West. So then you would get the 1 seed in Oakland, which it's just really, really, really tough. Or you get Minnesota, because if they get the 1 seed based on point differential, because they also have a tiebreak over Oakland. My question for you, and this will be the final question: how do you get 100% consistency for a game?
I mean, I feel like you're never going to get 100% consistency, but you hope that everybody is locked in and dialed in. And
I'm not talking about mistakes. I'm saying that dip. How do you go a whole game without that dip?
I think, from the offensive side, you want to make sure that you are just playing smart. Because, not to discredit Philly, New York is probably going to win the game, right? At this point, I think we'd be surprised if they lost. So
yeah, we're
gonna that. So
I give an 88% chance to win the game.
Right. So knowing that, you can't approach the game and be like, oh, that's a deep shot. Like, I'm gonna rip it. Like it's close. Maybe it'll work out. Like, I don't think you want to do that, because then you're just kind of reinforcing that's not the right attitude against DC
Yeah.
You're going to want to only take that shot when it looks like 100% certainty, and hopefully you execute it right then and it works out. But so you want to work through the resets. You want to make sure everybody's flowing and kind of involved and just taking your time and not forcing anything. And, if something looks a little dicey, just make sure you're always taking the second or third safe option instead of just kind of, not that anybody's like playing for stats, but like, just play chill, play smart, like kind of hammer out all the wrinkles nice and easy. On the defensive side of things, I think that this game, there's going to be a few players who will probably feel like they are playing to impress the coaching staff to get on the 20 for this. So I think defensively, they're probably going to be pretty locked in. I think they're going to approach it with some serious intensity because, we touched on it briefly. There's a few names who probably think they're in, and then that's it. There's probably like 8 guys who are, should be in a 20, but they don't know if they're going to be. So there's going to be whoever's playing, they're going to be like hunting for blocks, making sure they're giving everything they have. And then, if you can get blocks, great. Obviously that stands out. That's impressive. That makes a mark. After that, if they can play good offense and mistake free, or, some of the bottom of the roster guys can, just take their time with the disc, not make any mistakes, or score a goal or two, just make things easy for the D-line offense. I think, that's all they can do. If they just play easy and smart and nobody tries to do too much, you can stand out by just playing smart. And I think the intensity will be there because those guys are going to be trying to make sure that they are rostered.
Yeah, to my count here, and this is just, I'm not even going to say the names here, but to my count, there's 16, I'd say, guaranteed spots, as in players who pretty much, when healthy, made the 20 every single time. Have not, unless they were unavailable, they've been in the 20. 16 there. That means, to our point, we counted 25 players who've, again, played 4 or more games, who have regularly found themselves in the 20. And there are 9 players looking for 4 spots.
Yeah.
So there's your math. There's 9 players looking for 4 spots.
And just without like trying to break down who's where on that, any of those players could play on any good team in the league.
Yeah.
It's not like, he's kind of fast, or he's kind of tall. It's like, no, this is a full, complete player who can play on any team's D-line and contribute.
Yeah. Or even O-line.
Yeah, some of them probably, yeah.
We're talking O-lines, but like there's no guarantee that Kai Sneedagers or
yes, any of them could play on the Vegas O-line. I'm 100% certain on that.
True. But again, speaking about the Empire O-line, like even them, again, because it was, I didn't even count Sneedagers over the weekend. That's 10. So with Alex Davis, Sneedagers, like they've got 10 on their O-line. So even then, it's like not guaranteed. It might be matchup dependent how they're going to play out. So hard decisions for Cat Stevens and Anthony Nunez, which is a good thing. And we'll see if some of those decisions can be better made after the Philadelphia game, which again is going to be this Friday, 7 p.m. at the stadium at Memorial Field. We hope to see you there. And then it is all full steam ahead for the postseason to likely, again, very, very likely host DC. We have to wait for Friday and Saturday for official well, the Empire, Friday they can wrap it up by beating Philly. So there you go. So we'll know Friday night if it is going to be the Empire hosting. Again, it's very, very likely. We're looking at 95% chance, and we don't know when that game will be. But as soon as we do, of course, Instagram here on the YouTube channel for next week's show, we'll talk about it. So don't worry, we will have you covered for all that postseason prep when it comes. So for Matt, Pippin, Auletta, and myself, again, we will see you on Friday night. And then it is time for the postseason. Everybody, have a good week.